Hello, beautiful, gracious listeners. Today we're looking at people from Reddit's worst job interviews, and these all range from incredibly embarrassing for the interviewer to incredibly embarrassing for the interviewee. Just a compilation of very uncomfortable experiences. So let's go. Story 1. At an interview for a tech startup, they asked me, if you could be any animal, what would you be? I answered otter because, fun, active, works well with their hands, and cute as fuck. They really debated whether or not to hire me because of that answer, because, and I quote, "We only hire predators, not prey." And they weren't sure how to quantify an otter. I imagine because none of them had ever paid the least bit of attention to any sort of animal documentary, or, visited a zoo recently. That job sucked hard. It's frustrating that your chance to get the job lies in their stupid hands, but it tells you all you need to know about the company, so I wouldn't feel too bad. Story 2. I was interviewing people for a junior programmer position. We were looking for someone to train for a cheaper rate. This kid, pretty fresh out of college, shows up for the interview with his mum. Now, that's okay, these things happen. One time a girl's car was in the shop, or one time it was over 100 degrees outside and the dad asked if he could sit in the lobby. It's not a big deal. But this mum insisted on going into the interview room with her son. I asked her if she also planned to show up with him every day for work. She said no, so I told her I'd have to have the interview with him alone. At this, she insisted that she would go into the interview room with him and she would not take no for an answer. So I responded with, "Okay, in that case, this interview is over." The kid got the biggest grin I'd ever seen at seeing his mum punished for this sort of behaviour. I genuinely hoped that he could finally cut the cord and make something out of his life. You just know that the first thing he said to her when they left that room was, "I told you so." That kid must have had a really difficult upbringing. Story 3. I drove for an hour to an interview at 8 AM. I waited outside the interviewer's office until 8:30 AM with no one to tell me where to go or where she was. God, those would be the longest 30 minutes of my life. Finally, another employee walks by and I ask if they know where this woman is to interview me. They had no idea where she was, why she was late, and told me that if she wasn't there yet, I should leave because she probably forgot. Okay. I decide 45 minutes is the cutoff, especially since I'm standing there in a government building looking like a creep. 8:45 on the dot, she rushes in, flustered, wet hair, in casual yoga pants. With all the resurgence of patience I could muster, I greeted her, and was met with a passive-aggressive scolding of how the interview was at 9, not 8. I triple-checked the email asking me to interview and it was 8. We had a phone interview and she followed up with an email request to an in-person interview at 8. I was 100% positive on this. I hate being late. Not to mention that you've probably spent the last 45 minutes looking at that email. Even with all of this, and I did say, "I'm certain you said 8 AM, ma'am," she wasn't having it. Conversely, she also went on about why she was late, surmounting in, she went to the gym and forgot her underwear to change into and had to stop by a store to buy new ones after working out before coming to work. She told me this in the first 5 minutes. Why? I didn't ask her. Regardless, she looks at my resume, apparently for the first time, because she proceeds to tell me how it is unimpressive and my graduate studies should have yielded numerous publications after 1.5 years. In my field, most don't publish until after 3 to 4 years. Even still, she kept saying how I had moved up the interview time. She showed me the workspaces and told me I probably wouldn't be interested in what they do here. I politely told her I had driven, at her request, to be there and interview for employment. I was very interested. She just waved me off. As we left, I just tried to hold it together. I was very poor and very desperate for a job. I thanked her, and she told me how great it is to work for the government, how good the benefits, the pension, and the time off are. On and on. She said, if you can find an opening working for the government, you should try to check it out and get hired on.
That's why I'm here.
I just looked her in the face and said, "Yes, ma'am, that was my hope with today's interview. Thank you." And then I left. I sat in my car and bawled the whole way home like the desperate loser I was. That was a low one to be sure. Nothing in this story tells me that you're a loser. I have no idea how she got and was managing to keep that job, especially since the other guy you spoke to seemed unsurprised that she was probably late. But I hope he moved on to bigger and better things, and that she's inevitably fired sooner rather than later. Story 4. This morning, I had the worst interview I've ever had. It was via Teams and I'd set everything up beforehand. I wrote notes about the firm and basic things to say. It was quite warm, so I had the fan on. My first failure, 10 minutes before my interview, I clicked on the link and my laptop froze. Couldn't do anything with it. It wouldn't turn off, just froze. So I shouted for my eldest son, who's almost 19, to sort it. He couldn't, so he gave me his. I tried his, and that failed. By this point, it's 3 minutes until the interview. Since that wouldn't work, I ended up using my phone. Definitely a cardinal sin of interviews. They let me in and I'm already 2 minutes late. I then apologised and tried to make myself look professional enough, though I was sweating like mad and obviously very red. He then started asking me why I'd applied and what I knew about their business. As my laptop finally decided to boot up and started trying to add me to the meeting, I was frantically trying to turn it off and at the same time must have asked at least 4 times for him to repeat the question. I quickly looked around for my notes and thanks to the fan, my notes were at the other side of the living room. So I made up some utter nonsense. He then asked me why I wanted to leave my current job, which I said I wanted more hours, obviously worded better, but he misunderstood that as I wanted less hours. I then rambled for about 5 minutes about nursery prices. He had to butt in just so he could ask me about myself, and at that point I couldn't think of anything I liked doing or anything about me. Then suddenly my 3-year-old son ran into the room screaming that he had basically diarrhea and could I wipe his backside. My eldest crawled, think of the interview on BBC News with the nanny,
pardon me.
and dragged my 3-year-old out with him screaming, "I need mummy, there's too much poo." Yikes, that would be hard to laugh off. He cut the interview short, and unsurprisingly, I had an email telling me they won't be taking my application any further. I really wanted that job too. Well, it could have gone worse. Probably. Props to your 19-year-old for trying to help out though. I did major research on a company and expected questions in the interview. The only one they asked was, "What is our slogan?" Of course, I hadn't memorised that. As I left, I saw it was on the fucking giant sign outside. Interviewer putting candy bars on the table to open the interview. Have a candy bar. Do you want Hershey's or Snickers? Neither, thanks. Go ahead, pick one. I don't want any candy now, thanks. Take one, Hershey's or Snickers. Okay, I'll take the Snickers. No, I want the Snickers. You take the Hershey's. No, thank you. Maybe they were trying to pull off some dumbass power move stunt that they saw in a movie. Had an interview, went well. I was offered the job on the spot and accepted. The HR manager went to get the needed paperwork, came back 10 minutes later and said, "I must have forgot that we already filled this position. I'm sorry, but we don't have an opening. I could call you if something opens back up." I said no, thank you. I told them I couldn't answer their questions, farted audibly out of stress, and thanked them for their time. My first interview ever was at DQ, and I accidentally knocked a 90-year-old woman over. I interviewed for a newspaper. I have no background in anything similar. I'd never even read the paper. He asked me what would be a good addition to the paper. I said poetry. He showed me the poetry page. Then he showed me out. Hiring for a maid company. Question 1. How does cleaning make you feel? Answer. I mean, it's annoying and gross, but you pay good. Question 2. If you found a $100 bill under the bed, what would you do? Answer. I should say turn it in, but I'm honest. I'd stick it in my pocket. They obviously didn't need it if it's there. No question 3. Bye now. Maybe honesty isn't the best policy in this situation. And lastly, not an interviewer but an interviewee. One time I returned a call for a potential job, and the guy who answered was clearly drunk. He kept forgetting what he was talking about and repeating himself. Toward the end of the call, this guy actually asked if I had a cigarette. Over the phone. Story 5. I was a manager in a grocery store. We were interviewing for our overnight manager that I would be overseeing. He showed up, weighed approximately 500 pounds. Not that it's bad, but the job was very physical. He also had dandruff on his stomach. I could see droplets of grease in his hair, and he had pasta and coffee stains on his white gym shorts. Wow, OP rolled 20 for perception when he walked in. I don't even know what pasta stains looks like. His answers revolved around comparing himself to new school management, which I was, and kept saying how fucking great he was. He kept circling back to how awesome his old school style was and that all new school managers should look up to him. He did not answer his questions thoroughly and kept beating around the bush. When I concluded the interview, he got up, and that's when it hit me. Right in the face. I swear to Christ, that guy hadn't showered or wiped his ass in at least a week. I showed him out. I called him a few days later with some constructive criticism. I explained that old school management had its merits, huge fan of the old school style myself, I don't count on all this, but the political landscape of business had changed a significant amount. I also told him the turnover rate for this position was high, so he could apply again when it opened up. He called me every single day for 2 weeks asking me to reconsider. Apparently, he's lost over 200 pounds since then. Someone in the comments does clarify what they mean by the management styles. I'll just cover it quickly as it's not that interesting in my opinion. But they say how the old style in simplest terms is a manager who actually gets stuck in and works with their hands, whereas a new manager style would be less physical and lead from behind, or have people for the labour, kind of thing. Which obviously makes this story more strange, I suppose, as he doesn't seem like someone who favours physical labour. Or used to, in that case. Losing 200 pounds is incredible, so well done him. Final story, and it only makes sense to add a token Amazon interview story here, as it sounds like a really terrible place to work. I got an interview with Amazon to be a supervisor. They asked me to drive 1.5 hours to another city to do my second interview, despite the place I applied for being 10 minutes away from where I lived. The pay they were offering was good, so I thought it was worth it. I took a day off from my current job. I drove there, discovering that they'd given me choppy directions, causing me to get lost and have to ask for directions. The place I stopped at rolled their eyes. This wasn't the first time this had happened. They knew exactly where to point me. Red flag number 1. I finally arrive. Got to the interview, over 100 people show up. Red flag number 2. They're doing a group interview for a role, for a supervisor, and they tell me they accidentally invited too many people and they only have 10 positions available for the supervisor. So they ask me instead if I would like a starting position for barely above minimum wage. Red flag number 4. God, that's transparent and really scummy. I do my best, but feel insulted. I drove home feeling cheated. I wasted 4 hours driving and interviewing. I wasted all that gas and lost hours that I could have worked, and I went out of my way wasting precious time to go to another town just for them to say oopsie. They planned this. I realised working for them would be a huge mistake. They had no respect for me as a person, a potential employee, my time, money, gas. What made me think they would care about me once I'm hired? This was clearly a deceptive bait and switch, and I was not falling for it. Shady, shady, shady company. Shame on you, Amazon. I later sent them a letter declining the position. I would not be working for them. OP definitely got off easy. Like I said, Amazon sounds like a terrible place to work. There was a news story about a guy who had a heart attack while working for Amazon and lay dead on the floor for 20 minutes before first responders were called. Though the person who knew that should probably be investigated. Working for Amazon sounds like working for the Galactic Empire. And that's it for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please tell me your thoughts on any of these stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.